Hello and welcome to Vintage Sky channel. In this episode I'm going to tell you about the glider which was so fast that its top speed had never been achieved. The IS-4 Jastrząb glider. IS-4 Jastrząb was built in Poland just after the Second World War. Its name, very briefly, Jastrząb means hawk. This name was derived from the name of German glider DFS Habicht, which had been built before the Second World War in the 1930s, and Polish Jastrząb was to some extent inspired by the Habicht glider, hence its name. This was the first Polish fully aerobatic glider, which was designed by a team led by constructor Józef Niespał in Instytut Szybownictwa, this means the Institute of Soaring, in the city of Bielsko-Biała. Jastrząb was first flown in December 1949 and then brought into production after introducing minor changes in 1952. It was pretty small airplane for a glider. It had a wingspan of 12 meters, a length of 6 meters 25 centimeters, but within these dimensions it was pretty heavy because the gross weight of the glider itself was 255 kilograms, and it could accommodate the pilot with weight up to 85 kilograms. So a guy like me with parachute would be in the very top weight limit for this little glider. Why was the glider so heavy? Because there had been an idea while designing it that the maneuvering speed of the glider, the top maneuvering speed in which you could brutally pull controls to the stop, was meant to be unlimited. Therefore, as fast as the glider can go, it can be maneuvered with full range of motion of the control surfaces, which was obviously not pretty possible to achieve. But it made designers oversize elements of the glider, making them strong enough, and therefore the high weight within the little airframe. And when it comes to the speed, what was the speed achieved by the glider? Very high. The design was calculated to withstand the top speed of up to 450 kilometers per hour, and some sources say that it was about 500, but nevertheless the speed achieved by the glider was actually about 400 kilometers per hour. So this is nearly half the speed of sound in a glider which is made of wood and canvas, in this case mainly of wood. So this is unbelievable achievement. It was by far the fastest speed achieved by the glider at the time when it was introduced. When it comes to interesting features of its design, it had a tube which went across the nose, and this was the place where additional weight would be accommodated. It had to be inserted from the outside of the glider, so to make the center of gravity, center of balance in a proper place. Jastrząb glider proved itself to be greatly maneuverable. It was fully aerobatic. It was capable of withstanding any aerobatic figure which was performed by the pilot. It was painted in a distinctive way, traditional for aerobatic gliders, so that the livery on top was very vivid. There were like rays of sun or some stripes which were navy blue or dark red on white or other light colored surface, so that from the ground it could be clearly visible whether the airplane is in the inverted flight or it's flying normally. Also, the cockpit leaves no doubt that we have an aerobatic glider. By any standard, this cockpit was small, was cramped. When we look at the indicators, we see that at a central point we have the turn and slip indicator, and we have a speedometer just below, which is scaled to 350 kilometers per hour. There are not many instruments used for thermal soaring. We have only one climb and descent indicator, which was scaled to plus and minus 5 meters per second. In some Jastrzębs there was a gauge scaled to 15, but nevertheless there was only one climb and descent gauge in this glider. Its glide ratio was 19.6, so this was by no means glider meant for cross-country flying, thermal soaring or things like that. It was strictly aerobatic glider. What else do we have in the cockpit is the handhold, which is on the left side of the instrument panel, but it was not much used by the pilots. I'll soon explain why. During the flight, pilot was in a seated position, not bent to back, so all the G-forces were very clearly felt by the pilot, and the resistance on the flight stick was also high, so pilot had no doubt that he is flying fast and that the G-force is really high. Therefore it was difficult to maneuver this glider to its G-force limits. Therefore it was also pretty much safe. So we have a glider which has G-force limits and top speed limits, which are in fact not to be actually achieved in Earth atmosphere. There were obviously some flaws in the construction. One of them were the seatbelts. Seatbelts were taken directly from pre-war gliders, which were used for just soaring down the hill, and the manner of fastening those belts was just there was a hole in one side and the metal cone that went through it, and it was then blocked by a metal pin. And this was a design which was very easy to unbuckle, and it happened sometimes when it shouldn't. And therefore, pilots of Jastrom glider, to avoid unfastening the belts during the aerobatics, used the strap which was meant to be pulled in order to release the belts to somehow block this metal pin, and this made the seat belts stay, that this harness was solidly fastened. But on the other hand, it was difficult to unbuckle it, and there was at least one case when pilot wanted to bail out of the glider and was killed because he was not able to release the seat belts due to the manner they were fastened. When we talk of aerobatics, we obviously know that there is not much time to release seatbelts because especially after the construction of glider gets destroyed, especially the wings, and the fuselage starts a nosedive, then we have few seconds to bail out because the G-force is increasing, and at some point it will be too hard for the pilot to somehow detach, to separate from the fuselage to make an emergency parachute jump. Another thing which was not truly a best feature of the Jastrom glider were the air brakes, the spoilers. We obviously know that the spoilers meant to brake the glider to make the descent faster are basically flat surfaces which jump out from above and below the wing. And in case of Jastrom glider, here you see the mechanism, the lever, the manner in which the lever was blocked in a retracted position was not sufficient. So in this very steep, fast vertical dive at the speeds of about 400 kilometers per hour, it happened that the air brakes were sucked out and they were pulled open, which obviously means the destruction of structure. You can imagine you're traveling nearly 1/3 of or half of the speed of sound, and then you have this wooden rectangle just jumping out of the wing and creating extreme drag. So therefore pilots wanted to avoid this episode, this danger, and they, instead of holding the handhold which was shown in the picture, they kept holding the air brakes in closed position. So this is to avoid the self opening. The prototype of Jastrom actually had flaps instead of air brakes, instead of spoilers. Maybe this would be the safer feature, but somehow they resigned from it, and production gliders had actual spoilers. And the last element which was to be perfected was the canopy. The standard of those days was a separate canopy or even an open cockpit. But if there was a canopy, then as you can see here, it was a completely separate element, so that you had to get in the glider, get fastened, and then somebody handed it to you and you covered the cockpit with this canopy. And the canopy in Jastrom glider was another element which could not withstand the extreme speed. So in this vertical dive there were episodes that the canopy was pushed into the cockpit, wounding the pilot, or it fell away. There are special methods nowadays to make the canopy release itself in predictable manner, but it was not the case in those times. So what was done was some reinforcement made. There were additional struts on the canopy construction, first made of wood, then made of aluminium, and this provided sufficient strength, and the canopy was not longer sucked into the cockpit due to drag. The mechanism of releasing the canopy is in the center of the instrument panel. IS-4 Jastrząb gliders were built until 1953, and there were 37 gliders built in Bielsko-Biała and Krosno. 3 were sold abroad, 1 as far as to China and 2 to Eastern Germany, and they were operated in Polish airfields up until the end of 1960s. Due to the strong construction and the possibility of the steep vertical dive, the airplane was nicknamed the Axe, siekiera in Polish, by pilots, and the robust construction and the maneuvering characteristics make this name pretty self-explanatory. Honestly, I think that Jastrząb glider is one of my all-time favorites. It shows that a beautiful airframe with those antiquated gull-wing shaped wings, the flattened M design, it could be made, and I hope that many of gliders as beautiful and as successful or even more successful than Jastrząb will become known thanks to my channel. I'm Marek, and thank you for watching the first episode of Vintage Sky.